Hey, it's Scott Petrak with another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. The Browns saved their season, at least temporarily, with a 32-13 win over the Bengals on Monday night. They hit the bye week at 3-5. General Manager Andrew Berry stood pat at the trade deadline, and Deshaun Watson is scheduled to return after missing 3 more games. Here to discuss it all with me is Dave Chudowsky of Go, the WKYC Morning News. What's going on, Chud?
God, I'll tell you, there's nothing better than a win going into the bye, right? I mean, we've seen it plenty of times where it's the other way around. That the good feelings on a win on bye week is just fantastic.
No, there's no doubt, Chud. And to me, it really changed the whole landscape of this week and next week too. Before they travel down to Miami to play the Dolphins. If they went in the bye 2-6, the odds of them making the playoffs would be next to nothing, right? And at 3-5, they're not great, but there's hope. And on top of that, not only is there hope mathematically, just a difference between 3-5 and 2-6, you have the hope from the way that the Browns played. Andrew Berry, the GM, said it when we talked to him Wednesday. That's the best game they played, and it gives you promise that the team can continue to play like that. And it was the most complete performance of the first half of the season. So to me, it goes beyond a win. And then on top of that, if they were 2-6 and had lost 5 straight games, we'd be talking about, would Mike Prefer be fired? Would Joe Woods be fired? I mean, those are the kind of conversations that come up when you have this long layoff and you're on a long losing streak. So I think it's huge that they got that win.
Yeah, it's the difference of winning and losing. It is so great in the NFL. And the other thing too is you're not in a division with the Eagles with an undefeated team. You're not in a division where you're 4 games back. So while 3-5 isn't sexy, it's in the division they're in. While it's a tough division and they have so many division games left still too. I mean, that's important. There's not a team running away with it. So
same with the wild card, right? I mean, the wild card, I think there's a bunch of 4-4 teams. So yeah, you're 100% right, Judd.
Yeah, I got to tell you though. I mean, was that the Browns or was that a team dressing up on Halloween? Was that a team dressing up on Halloween? That's the team we expected to see all year. And boy, I mean, you and I did not see that coming. I mean, we didn't.
No, I thought about changing my pick to a Browns win. Just, you had the Chase injury for the Bengals. Clowney came back for the Browns. I thought about it, and it also was the Browns were so desperate, right? They needed this win. It felt like maybe their last stand even, right? On Monday night in front of the whole world watching football. I thought about changing it, but like we talk about all the time, 4 straight losses. You see all the flaws. Cincinnati had been playing well. I just didn't have the trust to go ahead and pick the Browns, even though I really thought about it. But even if I had picked them, I sure as heck wasn't going to pick them to dominate the way they did. And, I think part of it is the matchup. And, Joe Burrow is not going to go win this against the Browns. At some point, he's going to beat the Browns. But for right now, the Browns have his number, and a lot of that is pass rush and pressure. And they're able to make him uncomfortable in the pocket, taking advantage of their offensive line. That's a big part of it. And then, the Browns were successful on offense after a slow start. They protected the ball for the most part after, they had the one Jacoby Brissett fumble, but they ran it well enough, and Jacoby Brissett had another good game throwing the ball.
Yeah. Well, hey, listen, we both predicted the Bengals to win, but we only did it by 3 points. And, we did give a recipe to how the Browns could win, and that's kind of what they did. We just didn't think it would happen. I think we're both 4-4 in our picks now. But yeah, I guess I didn't really realize how much Chase being out would affect them because they were so hot and because Burrow has been so good. So, I wasn't going to change it just for the fact of I needed to see them win again before I was going to pick them. So I stood by that. And also because I just thought Burrow was so hot. But what I didn't take enough consideration is, and you already mentioned it, is now Burrow is 0-4 against the Browns. And that's something I'm going to think about now every time these two teams play. Now the Bengals have to prove to me that they can beat the Browns. Right now the Browns have their number.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Chet. And I wasn't really buying that. I wasn't buying that heading into Monday night. I knew he was 0-3, but it felt like, he could have won a couple of those games, or at least one of them. The one in Cincinnati where Baker had the great comeback. The original Thursday night was like his second game in the league. Now, you could explain away the 0-3 pretty easily, I felt. But you add one more in his third season, coming off a Super Bowl appearance, and it feels more real to me, right? Like it feels like it's something. So I completely agree with you there.
Yeah, the place was rocking.
Yeah, it was cool. The atmosphere was cool. A lot of people dressed up as Halloween, and I'm not a big Halloween guy, and I know whether it's a TV thing or not, Chud, I know you are because I've seen the videos. Well, I'm not a huge Halloween guy, but I know Cleveland is, and the city in Northeast Ohio is ready to celebrate Halloween because, I came home and I watched the Manningcast broadcast, and every time they come out of commercial, it's people in costumes at the stadium.
Yeah, what a night. I mean, that was just a fantastic night. And, really the defense just, we have hit it so hard on this podcast, but the defense to me was, Nick Chubb's great, and you're not surprised when he dominates. But what was it, 5 sacks?
Yeah.
Just the way that the defense just controlled the game was so impressive.
Hey, there's no doubt. And, I'm actually posting a story about Sione Takitaki as we're doing this. And he played really well. And Kevin Stefanski talked about the individual efforts. Myles Garrett with the sack and a half set the tone early. Not only did it have the sack and a half, he deflects the ball that leads to that first interception and sets a great tone for the game. And then you have Sione Takitaki, who played an extended role. And he's usually the strong side linebacker. Only plays in the base package. They get him off the field if they think teams are going to throw the ball, if he's got to make plays in space. But with the injuries they had at linebacker, he played a bunch, and he was on the field for even in those nickel situations and was all over the place. Had 13 tackles, had a strip sack of Burrow, a tackle for loss. So he played really well. And the point, what I'm trying to get to is, I asked him the other day, does this feel like any kind of vindication for Joe Woods, right? We've talked about Joe Woods a lot, and he's been criticized a lot. And Sione Takitaki said, yes, the last 2 weeks, a better performance in Baltimore, in that loss to the Ravens, and then in the win over Cincinnati, he feels like that is some vindication for Joe Woods, that this defense has figured some things out. He said Joe Woods called a great game plan, and I think it's interesting. And, it could go sideways coming out of the bye. But for now, it feels like for the second straight year, Joe Woods has figured something out, and the defense is playing much better.
Over on the offensive side of the ball, you would have thought that the tight ends would be more involved with catching passes, but again, it was the Chubb show. I mean, incredible. Kareem Hunt got involved. Amari Cooper. It was a well-oiled machine offensively as well.
It really was, and I'm glad you brought up the tight ends. To me, it's noteworthy, and Kevin Stefanski admitted this. He can't remember the last time, if ever, that his tight ends didn't have any targets, right? I mean, he didn't go into history, but he said, yeah, it's unusual. They weren't targeted at all, and they played a bunch. It was Harrison Bryant and Pharaoh Brown. You had Michael Dunn, the extra offensive lineman, played some third tight end. Even Miller Forrestall got a couple of snaps off the practice squad. But so it's interesting that the tight ends didn't get targeted. But on top of that, I think it does show you how important David Njoku is. Because if David Njoku were out there, he would have been targeted because he's having that type of season. But he wasn't. So the Browns, Kevin Stefanski or Jacoby Brissett, looked for other ways, other people to move the ball in the passing game. And a lot of that went to Amari Cooper. And Amari Cooper played really well. And he had the touchdown. He had a long 53-yarder. He had the terrible interception on that trick play that he called an abomination. But he played well. But my point is Kevin Stefanski is able to find a way to get his best players the ball. Not all the time, and I know all the Chubb and Hunt arguments. But even without his number 2 target in the passing game in David Njoku, Kevin Stefanski was able to design plays that got Amari Cooper the ball, even though the Bengals had to be focused on stopping him. and I know the Bengals were down some corners. And Jacoby Brissett had another big game, right? So my point is, Kevin Stefanski's scheme is able to get guys open. And I think when we focus on some of the minutia, right, this play call, that play call, we lose sight of the fact that his scheme is solid overall.
Yeah, it makes you wonder what it could be like when Deshaun Watson comes back, you know?
It does. It does. And you can't, I've been trying not to focus on that because of the season and, right, we got all these games until Deshaun Watson comes back. But now you can kind of see it coming, right? It's 3 games away. He's able to start practicing on November 14th. We'll be able to see him on the field, which we haven't seen since he left the building on August 30th. Came back in the building October 10th, but he can't practice yet. So, yeah, you can see that, right? And when we talk, possibility of the playoffs, it's always with, okay, well, Deshaun Watson comes back for the last 6 games. So what does that mean, right? Where do the Browns have to be? And we talked about this before the season, Chud. I thought they needed to be 6-5. Now, that feels really unlikely that they're going to go. I mean, they got Buffalo, right? Buffalo is probably the best team in the NFL, and they have Buffalo on the road. But if they can get to 5 games, which means they have to win 2 out of Miami, Tampa, Buffalo, which isn't impossible. If they could win 2 of those and get to 5 and 6 when Watson comes back, then it gives you, then there's a chance. 5 and 1, I think, gets you in then. I think 10 and 7 gets into the playoffs. And 9 and 8, you probably have tiebreakers, or you might be able to have tiebreakers, right? If he could go 4 and 2. And the schedule looks a little easier at the end. Pittsburgh's not playing like I thought they would. So when I talk about the hope and the math, that's part of it, right? But, and I don't want to go too long, is Jacoby Brissett has played way better than I thought and has given them a chance to win a bunch of games, and he did again Monday night.
You think they can win 2 out of the next 3?
Yeah, I do. I haven't studied Miami enough. I've seen bits and pieces of them. I don't know if I've seen a full game yet. I know Tua is back, and I know his numbers are out of this world. I know Mike McDaniel, the new coach, is a great schemer, right? Great offensive designer. He came from Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan. He was here as a receiver coach when Shanahan was the OC here. So Miami's a good team. I think they're flawed. I don't think they're perfect, right? They were losing by a bunch to Detroit last week. It's going to be hard. I don't know what the line will be, but I would guess the Browns are a touchdown underdog. But, yeah, I think that's winnable. I mean, Tampa Bay at the beginning of the season, I would have said no way, but they're really struggling. So you hope that struggle continues until, the Browns face them. And then Buffalo's really hard. So I would say it's unlikely the Browns go 2-1, but not impossible. And even if they were 4 and 7, that's a huge uphill climb for Deshaun Watson, especially when he hasn't played in 700 days. But it wouldn't be over at 4 and 7 if Jacoby Brissett turns it over to him at 4 and 7.
Isn't it funny, the narrative we talked about last time with how we analyze games? Think about if they lost. We would be like, what were they doing on the Cooper pass and the blocked field goal and all that other, you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
It's nice. It's nice we don't have to break that down.
Oh, there's no doubt. And that was, I understand why you call trick plays. And maybe, and he said he was trying to throw it away. He knew the guy wasn't open. He was trying to throw it away. He didn't know how hard it was to throw the ball away. The guy was pressuring him, he doesn't have his feet set, and he just can't get the ball out of bounds. But you're right. Like, the tone of it would have completely different because he's laughing about it after the game. But he called it an abomination. He said he's never going to throw one again. Jacoby said we're taking it out of the playbook. But, if the Bengals had played better, the Browns had played worse, and all of a sudden it's a close game, that's exactly – you're pointing to that. You're pointing to Brissett's bad turnover. You're pointing to Cade York getting another field goal blocked. Instead, you're focusing on the win, on the good stuff, and the fact that Cade York rebounded and smashed a 55-yard field goal to end the first half after his previous 2 kicks had been blocked.
Yeah. I didn't touch on this last week. We both forgot, or at least I forgot. I don't know. But was there anything to after the last loss, they had a yelling match in the locker room? Is that substantial? Is that confirmed Did that happen?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was sitting right outside the locker room, so yeah, it happened. I could hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was told it was more louder than normal, right? But not unusual for guys to let off steam, right, and yell after losses. But I think this went up a notch. To me, it was about do they stick together, right? Can this be a dividing line? Because there was talk, the one line you could kind of hear was a line about leadership. We don't have any leadership. I'm paraphrasing. But the fact that they stuck together and played as well as they did and put in as much effort and all that, not that they don't play hard all the time, but there was hey, this is the bye week. We're going to do everything we can heading into the bye. I think that was significant. And I think this type of win after a 4-game losing streak can really galvanize a team because Jacoby Brissett talked about it. Kevin Stefanski talked about it. If you come out the other side of hard stuff, and I don't know exactly how they phrased it, but we knew stuff was going to be hard. You get to the other side, then it feels better and it feels like it was earned. And there's some sentiment of that in the Browns team right now.
Yeah. So we got about 8 minutes left here, Scott. So let's divide it up in half here, 4 minutes on each. Let's move on from the game now, and we don't have a game to break down. We can do that next week with the bye. Let's just hit the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Both of us didn't like the idea of Kareem Hunt being traded for a 4th or 5th round pick, really. And, there was a lot of talk about, he possibly could get traded. Bottom line, they didn't make any deals. What are your thoughts on the trade deadline?
Yeah, I didn't think they should trade Kareem Hunt, just give him away, and I think that's what they probably would have done. So I believe that was the right move by Andrew Berry. Greedy Williams, he was another candidate. You don't know about Denzel Ward. He's still in that concussion protocol when he's going to come back. So maybe that's why they kept Greedy Williams. They value, he played as a third corner the other day and actually fought through illness. He started the game, left, sat on the sideline. AJ Green came in and got that pick. But Greedy looked terrible. He's on the sideline. I don't know if he was pouting or sick. And then I talked to him after the game. He said he was sick. And he had been during the week, but then he played in the second half. So those are the two guys I was focused on, Hunt and Williams. I don't think they got a big enough offer for Hunt for as valuable as he is. And then I think Williams told me he wanted to stay. And then I think the Denzel Ward lingering concussion is a factor there. This guy, Greedy Williams, is now 3rd on your depth chart. You probably don't want to just give him away, trade him for a 5th or 6th round pick. It's a prime position. That makes sense to me. And then the other nugget is Andrew Berry said he came close to acquiring a player. And I didn't tell us who it was, but it just shows you he was looking to add, and whether that's for this year or the future, it means it points to that 3-5 versus 2-6. Berry admitted that played at least a little role in how he approached the deadline because they have a better chance to go to the playoffs.
That goes back to what you opened with about the difference of whether they won or lost that game and talking about firing people and that exact type of thing, what you just brought up there. I mean, exactly. that played a factor.
Yeah, no doubt.
That was huge. Yeah. How about just in the NFL, though? I mean, geez, we haven't seen anything like that with all the trades.
No, and, I always say it, there's all this talk and then nothing happens. Well, stuff happened this year. It's probably still not to the magnitude of the NBA and MLB trade deadlines, but it was big, right? I think there were 10 trades. There's a record for the number of trades. You saw some big names, right? Bradley Chubb gets moved. Roquan Smith, I don't know if he was right at the deadline, or the day before, but there were names that moved, big names that moved. So yeah, it's interesting. And I'm not saying anything anybody doesn't know. We're going to continue to see that, right? I don't think it's going to disappear. I think we're going to see more and more trades at the deadline.
Yeah. All right, let's finish it out with Andrew Berry. He spoke with you guys this was it Wednesday? Whatever day that was this week. Wednesday. I'm getting my days all mixed up this week with Monday Night Football and Halloween and all that. It's just like, what day is it? Oh, thank goodness it's Friday. We're taping this on Friday. What are the key points out of that? I saw, a lot of talk about Stefanski, some injury updates, Watson, the trade deadline. Those seem to be the highlights, right?
Yeah. I think you hit them. It was Watson's going to start when he comes back. He's done everything they've asked him to do and more. I think that was the quote. He has hopes for the second half, like we talked about. Needs more consistency, right? That was his point. Is if we're going to do what we want to do in the second half, Monday's the template, and then we have to be more consistent doing it. And then the Nuggets were, we talked about the trade deadline, and then it was Kevin Stefanski, and I kind of referenced it earlier, and we've talked about it, and it's a hot button issue, right? When the Browns don't play well, it's Kevin Stefanski's the play caller. It's should he be focusing more on game management? And Barry said, I think the quote was something like, "We have more belief in him now than we did when we hired him, and we think he does a good job calling plays and as a game manager, and that he appreciates Kevin Stefanski appreciates the magnitude of those roles, right? In each role individually. So you're not going to have a change there, but it wasn't a vote of confidence, right? The vote of confidence is when the guy's in trouble. This was just a strong show of support for their head coach.
How about injuries? Anything that we need to really keep our eyes on here before we talk again next week?
Well, that is part of the bye week is you get that extra time. So there's hope. Andrew Berry brought it up a couple times. The hope for guys getting healthy during the bye. That starts with Denzel Ward, but he wasn't committing to that he's going to come back from the concussion after the bye. He was still in the protocol. You just got to be careful with concussions. You never know, right? So, but guys who you do know about are Wyatt Teller has a chance to come back from that calf strain. David Njoku, who is in a walking boot at the game Monday, but now he gets 2 weeks. It's a high ankle, so there's no guarantee he comes back against Miami. But he'll be further along, obviously. And then JOK missed the game with the knee. He's the other big one to watch. Jadeveon Clowney, Myles Garrett. That's more time for them to recover from these lingering issues. Should get Jerome Ford, the rookie running back off of IR, and he should return kickoffs again. So it's just an overall health. And I mentioned the key guys, and I wouldn't underestimate how important this could be for Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, and how important they are to this team. And we saw that against the Bengals. And I think there's a chance for Myles Garrett to have a big second half. He said before this Bengals game that he's not close to 100%, and he feels better every day. Hopefully the bye will help. And I just think he's playing so well that if he's even healthier, then you could see him have a huge second half.
I'm going to finish on this. That was an impressive win, and I hope to see more of it. And I don't want to be, Debbie Downer here, but we've seen Lucy, Charlie Brown, the football. They've done this to us before. Yeah. I need to see more of it, though, Scott, before I totally am convinced that they can do this more often than not.
No, that's a completely fair statement. It's any given Sunday or Monday, right? Teams come out and play well, and then they don't. And it's going back to Andrew Berry's comment about consistency. That's what matters. That's what's going to separate teams. But I would say the hope is your offense has played well for the vast majority of the season. And if your defense has figured something out the last 2 weeks, and it's premature to say it's figured it out, but it's played a lot better the last 2 weeks against two good offenses and two different offenses. A great quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. If your defense is able to build on that and stay at that level, then you have a chance to make a run.
All right. That's it for me. Have a great bye week. Enjoy the weekend. You can watch some football or enjoy this. It's going to be 73 degrees. It's going to be unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm going to go play golf as soon as we're done with this, Chud. And then I'm going to watch my Northwestern Wildcats lose by 50 to Ohio State.
Okay.
And maybe watch some football. But before we go, I do want to just get this quote from Barry right about Stefanski. Our belief in Kevin is as strong as the day that we hired him. Smart, servant leader. He's creative. He knows he has the ability to lead our team to wins, and we feel really good. We feel like the locker room's in good hands. We know he pushes our guys, and we're looking forward to playing good football in the second half of the season. So that's a really strong endorsement. I just wanted to get that quote right because it felt like I butchered it a little bit. So, yeah, Chud, I got a tea time. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. We will reconvene next week to talk about the Dolphins game and the second half of the season. Do you got anything else?
No,
Good?
I'm ready. I'm ready for this nice warm weather in the weekend, my friend, for sure.
Perfect. So thank you, Chud. Thanks everybody for listening to another episode of the Brown Zone Coverage Podcast. And you can read all my work at brownzone.com. Thanks so much.